John Carpenter's 1982 horror classic The Thing is a great movie. I love most of the director's work and I count this among his best. But here's the thing about The Thing. As great as it is, when it comes to the mystery elements of the film, this movie cheats. So there are a ton of threads and videos out there trying to map out an infection timeline for the creature. There's also a lot of fun theories as well as some pretty serious debates about the ending. And look, I get it, fan theories are fun and all that, I'm just saying that every single one of these are absolutely 100% incorrect. The movie doesn't give a fuck about its own internal logic, let alone the ideas of some internet rando over 30 years later. So in this year's edition of Fade Lets His Weird Compulsions Run Wild in the Halloween video, we're gonna nitpick the fuck out of The Thing and prove every fan theory on the internet wrong. So, yeah, spoilers incoming. In an early scene, we're introduced to our mainish character who's getting drunk on the computer. It's amazing how relatable this film is over 30 years later. MacReady is playing this chess game, we get a couple shots of the chessboard and a few moves called out. Now, I didn't bother tracking the moves made or anything like that because I can tell at a glance these shots are obviously from completely different games of chess. This isn't a mistake or an oversight, it's extremely obvious and MacReady calls attention to it.
Cheating bitch.
Now, I know John Carpenter to be a pretty intelligent man. I've seen him in interviews and various commentaries he's done over the years. He's also not big on bullshit. You don't need to be a grandmaster at chess to end up agreeing with MacReady that the computer did indeed cheat. Whether or not it's a bitch is a subjective thing, so you can decide that for yourself, but let's just keep this scene in mind as we go on. Also, I'm getting sidetracked here, but say hello and goodbye to the only female character in the entire film. Unless you count some of the dogs, maybe? Actually, even the crew shooting this was pretty much all male. Legend has it that there was one female crew member who left due to pregnancy and was replaced by a dude. Don't tell the feminist guys, we might end up with an all-female reboot. Actually, never mind, tell them. An illusion between the gruesome special effects and the menstrual cycle could be an interesting dynamic. I'm thinking more like Ginger Snaps and less like 2016 Ghostbusters. I don't know. Anyway, back to that thing I was doing, there's a few theories thrown around about how the thing can spread. Obviously it can violently assimilate its victims, we see that pretty bluntly. It's also later mentioned that it may be able to spread via bodily fluids like saliva. It's later revealed that even a single cell of this creature can spread and infect its hosts. So, depending on what you believe this monster is capable of, the camp falls into various levels of fucked. Like, if a single cell of this creature can spread and infect new hosts, that's pretty fucked from day one. With saliva and other bodily fluids, that's still fucked, but to a slightly lesser extent, with some hope of survival. So, let's go through some of the evidence and try to straighten some of this out. Right away, this dude gets licked, so he's pretty much infected if you believe it can pass via saliva or cells. Problem is, this guy gets violently assimilated later in the film, so it's completely irrelevant.
Cheating bitch.
This other dude is also all up in the dog's face at the start of the film, and later it's revealed in the blood test scene that he wasn't infected or assimilated at all. I get that an infection type assimilation would take a lot longer than a violent one and may not necessarily manifest right away, but this dude was among the first exposed and had the most contact with the dog throughout the beginning of the film.
Cheating bitch.
We also get the dog creeping up on this silhouette. We don't know exactly who it is or in what manner this person is assimilated, but we can guess by the hairstyle and the later outcome of the film that it's either this guy or this guy. Worth note is that the actor for the silhouette isn't actually any of the main cast members, it's just a random member of the film crew.
Cheating bitch.
We never find out how the other one of this pair gets assimilated. Also, right before both of these guys turn, they're acting completely normally, both working toward the greater benefit of the entire group in some way. This guy is literally calling everyone's attention to someone alone outside, instead of, seeing the obvious chance to assimilate an isolated victim. For some reason, it decides to call further attention to itself by having a heart attack. It kills a dude before promptly getting torched. We'll talk about the dude who gets his arms bitten off in a second. This other guy shows shock at the previous guy's transformation and genuine concern and remorse for this completely uninfected guy who was shot by MacReady moments before the blood test.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
So that's the same dude who earlier in the film shared a joint with Keith David. Childs passes the blood test later on, so again, it really doesn't seem like this is spreading through saliva or random particles. Hell, these guys all straight up smoke some Thing corpse, which is later revealed to have some active cells in it, and quite a few of these guys pass that blood test.
Cheating bitch.
It could be more of a rabies kind of thing. This one dude turns pretty rapidly when he gets bitten, but this guy who gets his arms bitten off just straight up dies. No infection, nothing.
Cheating bitch.
So, for the most part, the Thing doesn't seem to act in its own self-interest or even be aware that it's the Thing. Except for the Doctor. He got wrist deep in some thing guts pretty early on. When he learns of the nature of the thing and runs a computer simulation seeing what it may be capable of, he has a pretty reasonable reaction of shutting down all communications and transportation, as well as trying to kill everyone on the base.
I'll kill you!
But then he spends most of the second act of the film isolated in his cabin, eventually carrying out tasks beneficial to the thing, such as building what we assume is an escape ship out of spare helicopter parts. He hand faces this guy pretty good before getting blown the fuck up.
Yeah, fuck you too!
There are a couple other loose ends, characters who randomly get flamethrowered off screen or disappear without any explanation to their fate. Some of the deleted and unshot scenes can explain this, but within the film, Niles is just in a tunnel, then he's not.
Cheating bitch.
There's a pretty substantial subplot about the group finding some torn clothing that belongs to MacReady, and that he may be infected. He passes the blood test.
Cheating bitch.
As we come to the iconic final scene of the film, with the themes of paranoia, mistrust, isolation, and ambiguity firmly at play, I can definitively say that there's no way to definitively tell who's infected and who isn't from the pair at this point in the film. If one of these two is infected, they likely don't even know it themselves, and that's the whole fucking point. It's very possible that Childs got violently assimilated off-screen during the third act. It's also equally likely that the whole camp was infected pretty quickly by the dog, but the infection just hasn't progressed to the point of detection by the blood test scene. Much like the chess game that introduced the main character, the film has its pieces moved around in a way that doesn't make logical sense even within the film's own rules. No matter what interpretation you have, there will always be some contradictions, and that's by design. It's part of the appeal and why it's such a fun film to discuss. It leaves so much to the imagination that one can't help but give in to the feeling of paranoia this film emanates and question everything, down to the use of highlight or the amount of visible condensation coming from the actor's breath. If you include the 2002 Carpenter-approved sequel video game and the 2011 prequel movie, you get a pretty clear canon ending that they're both human. Childs freezes to death, and Mac somehow not only survives, but gets to a helicopter and for some reason decides to come back in order to fight a giant hand thing. I definitely prefer the film as a standalone, where the viewer is left to wonder. It's more poetic this way. But it is fun to speculate, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. While you're down there, do me a favor and like and subscribe if you haven't already. Once again, this is Fade Dragonfear. Thanks for watching. Happy Halloween, guys.